Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the LFC Transfer Room. You're with Dan and Colin. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Liverpool have won a football game at Anfield. It felt like a long, long time ago. 4-2 against Spurs. It's just what we do, mate. Colin, tell me how you feel.
Yeah, much better. Yeah, that's the kind of performance that we expect from our players and expect from our team. You expect to put Tottenham in their place. You expect to hear them and see them whine on Twitter after they lose. So, yeah, I feel great. Yeah, we were talking the performance just across the board from people who have had maybe up and down seasons. I thought was pretty much across the board was great today. So.
Yeah. No, I do. I really thought we were excellent, and I can see all the people who are watching us live here. I think you're all very looking forward to this match reaction. So thank you very much for joining us. Please get your messages in the chat, lads, and girls are obviously watching. We really, really appreciate it. We're trying to get through them as much as we can. Isn't it amazing what a week can do? Like a week's difference between the way that we played last week, the 3 games in 1 7-day run. We got 1 win, Fulham away, great result. I think we're all quite pleased with the way that we played in that match. Then we come into the midweek game, Everton, less said about the better. And then, of course, come up to the West Ham game where, again, we just look flat. We look really kind of every time that the opposition come to attack us, we were like we were going to concede. And today was very different. First half, 2-0. Not conceded a goal first time, and I don't know how long since we hadn't conceded by half time, and that was a really, really nice thing for us to see, and I think everyone would be really impressed at that. Mo Salah comes back in amongst the goals, and he looked much more like a Mohamed Salah that we all know and love. Colin, what did you make of Mo after last weekend's mini drama that was made into a massive mountain?
Yeah, looked like a different person out there today. Even down to like almost like posture and just like looked like a different player, and looked like the player that we know. He was so good. I think it helps when you're playing a defender who's absolutely terrible. But it certainly doesn't hurt. And when you know that you have someone's number, I think that gives you a kind of confidence and a freedom to play in the way that you know how. And that's what I think we really got from most today was, we expect those kinds of performances from him. And when you get them, I think we're reminded about how special he can be.
Yeah, he really is a special player, and I think he kind of, he wanted to make a point of it, didn't he? That he came in there and gave us a rare header. It's only his 9th headed goal that he's ever scored for Liverpool, so it's a real treat, to be honest with you. He doesn't like to get his hairdo in any kind of a mess, does he? Let's be totally honest with you. But yeah, it was really, really nice. I thought that his overall gameplay throughout the entire match was really, really positive. Like, he looked like he was playing with a smile on his face. He was trying to, he was making those moves. The body language was all right. And it was just really, really, really nice to see that we had the kind of the Mo that we all knew. And form is temporary, and I think that really was what he was going through was a form issue, in my opinion. And it still leaves a big question mark over the summer. It certainly leaves about what the future Mohamed Salah is, but that is for another day. That'll be for another day as to where we get up to. But we want to talk about the positives that came from today, and another brilliant positive, and I want people's opinions in the chat, was Cody Gakpo. Is that his best performance since perhaps when he burst onto the scene when he joined us?
I think he's certainly been trending in the right direction now for a little while, which is funny to say because he's one of the only ones that I think has had a sort of upward trajectory, I think, for the most part, over the past 2 months. I thought at times when we have looked terrible, he has looked up for it in a way that some people have not. And I think it's great to see that be rewarded with such a great performance in a game and to get the goal, That's his level. And when he's playing with the confidence, I think starting looks like it means so much to him. I don't think he's been very effective when he's come on, or he's been, to me, less effective or less bright when he does come on. When you get a game that was so as open as today was, it's just really great to see someone, really kind of flourish in a game that, or I guess over a period of time where there's not been a ton of people who have been flourishing.
And do you know what? I think that's really nice to say. I mean, obviously, congratulations from having his child only last week. While he left out from the game against Everton, he's had a goal against West Ham, which came off about 1,400 people to go into the net. However, he got his goal today. He got his assist, and his assist that for Mo Salah was absolutely sublime. It was absolutely fantastic ball. Straight in over the top. Mo Salah puts it away, and the chances were building up to that point. I just felt for Gakpo, like it was like a breath of fresh air had just come into him. He from a player who looked like he was quite, I don't know what the right word is. He looked, I don't know. He looked like a player who's kind of a bit lost. He didn't quite know where his position was in this team. Like Diaz has the left-hand side sort of locked down, under his own. And then Mohamed Salah's obviously got the right-hand side. And then Darwin Núñez started the season, had this incredible start. And where Gakpo kind of was almost being punished, really, for his, what's the right word? He's been punished for the fact that he was so versatile. He's started out in that midfield and worked there. And everyone was like, oh, brilliant, look how great he is. He's done really, really well there. And then he's gone and moved on to his next situation, which was like, going up to front. And I still recall quite vividly the Wolves game, if anyone remembers, when we were just chatting about it when we played at 12:30. He really didn't play well at all in the starting part of that match. And then what did he go on and do? He scored that goal just the moment before he was about to be subbed. And then kind of going from there on in, he went through quite a barren patch where he really wasn't able to get into this team. And this is the right time for any player to be getting back into form and making a name for yourself. Will be A, just before the Euros, and B, just before your new manager comes in. So for Cody, I am so pleased that he's playing the way that he is, and I really hope that he can continue this on. I just want to thank absolutely everybody who joined us today. 955 of you are currently watching us now. This is absolutely fantastic. I'm so pleased that you're all here. So please put your chats in, put your comments in. If you can get a like on for us, honestly, I'd really appreciate it. It means the world to us. Thank you so much. Right, so the next thing I suppose we've got to really talk about is it's 2-0, it's half time. Going into it, Cody Gakpo into the second half, he gets his goal, but we need to talk about the person who I think is going to be everyone's man of the match, to be totally honest with you. Harvey Elliott. I mean, what a performance from this young man. I mean, that's incredible, isn't it? Come on. Tell me, Carl, tell me about Harvey Elliott.
Yeah.
I wasn't surprised he started. I mean, if he plays like that going forward, he's got to be nailed down as a starter, hasn't he?
Especially if we're to believe that the new manager who's to be coming in is going to continue with a similar formation to what he's preferred previously. And, the one thing I was thinking about, you had kind of mentioned, was I was kind of wondering if the formation switch to was sort of 4-2-4 4-2-4-ish today, wouldn't you say, rather than like 4-2-3-1? I wonder if a switch to a formation like that hasn't tactically been made because we know who's coming in and we know how they want to play, and having it sort of transitionally from what we would really want to what the new manager would really want. I think that's something that Jurgen might have considered. And if that is the case, I think that would be the best possible thing for Harvey, and I think today was really evidence of that. Like his ability to influence the game was so incredible. Like his pressure, his pressing, his playmaking, like he just he's been really growing into his role in the team, I think, over the past 18 months. He's been the impact sub for the team throughout this calendar year. And I couldn't be happier that he's being able to put in performances like this. I think that that's a player that if you are Arne Slot and you're keeping a close eye on it, I don't know that you could be any happier with what you're getting, especially out of Harvey, leading into what we would expect to be probably 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2-ish, 4-2-4, that kind of ideology in tactics. And I think that there's some really special performances, in the next 12 months to, hopefully 5 to 10 years of Harvey's career with us.
Oh, 100%. And I want everyone's opinion in the chat, please. This is something that's important, is that Harvey Elliott, I've been critical of him in certain respects, as you need to be, is that when he started games, it's been very, very difficult to pin him down to one where he started and he has been good. Like, he's had an influential football match where he's started the game and played to a point where we're like, brilliant, absolutely nailed on for this game. And it came numerous times, even in Europe, where he'd have a substitute appearance, be absolutely fantastic, really influential, kind of get a goal, get an assist. And he started to really dictate the play, and everyone was like, right, he's got to start next game. He starts the next game, and then it just doesn't happen. It doesn't appear for him. It doesn't work, and then he kind of drops out again. And this, I have to say, to be totally honest with you, was perhaps the first time. And if anyone can tell me of another game, then I would really appreciate it. Is that this is the first game he started where he's absolutely bossed it from minute one to the minute he left the pitch. I thought he was brilliant, to be honest. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. He was very good with the press. He was very good at kind of working with the formation, because the way that we worked to defend against them was to stay narrow and stay disciplined and allow them to have the ball on the wings, because we weren't frightened of what they could do with Brennan Johnson and Porro and whoever that they have down their wings, because it wasn't where they're going to hurt us. And I thought he was absolutely fantastic for that game, to be totally honest. So, someone I want us to kind of just go into before we finish the goals. Actually, we'll finish the goal scores, then we'll go into some of the really, kind of memorable sort of players in that game. Because there's quite a lot of comments here about Jarell Quansah, who I want to go into, and I think that's well worth talking about. So, of course, the Eliiot goal, absolutely spectacular, wasn't it? I mean, it's something that we've seen Salah do for years and years and years, and Eliiot to kind of crown his performance with that wonderful goal was a thing to be seen. And if he can add that into his game more often and show that ability, and maybe just have that little bit of bravery just to take that chance, because it can be difficult to kind of, to take that shot and not go in, and then players are going to be sitting there going, I'm here, like, what's going on? And he had the bravery to take that shot. Maybe it's a bit easier when you're 3-0 up, and the game's done, and it's much easier to do. But I was really, really impressed with him. And Paul here said he's a midfielder, not a winger. I actually massively agree with you. I don't ever like Harvey Elliott as a winger. He just doesn't seem to fit in it to me. To be honest with you, it wasn't for me. Now I want to go through some of the comments that I've actually started, which are well worth bringing up to, which was the opinions on Jarell Quansah. And here's your opinion, guys. I say Jarell Quansah is now ahead of Konate for the spot beside Verge. Am I crazy, Paul? You are not crazy. I'm not calling the men in the white coats. People were calling me for saying I think Konate potentially is at risk of losing his position, not just in the team, but potentially being a player who could be a saleable asset. Cole, tell me, Jarell Quansah, he's clearly at the same level performances-wise as Ibrahima Konate. However, right, Ibrahima Konate has had, right now, but I mean, Konate's had a couple of years of learning from the very best next to him, and Jarell Quansah seems to have been able to come in there, and he's put in some really, really big performances.
Yeah, he has. He's been unbelievable. There's not one of us, and I don't believe that there would be anybody watching or in the comments that before the season would have been like, Jarell Quansah, he's the one. Like he's he's the next one. But man, he's sure looked like it. And I think, you think back to those comments that he sort of made it in the press conference after Joel got injured. And while maybe not the most tasteful time to say those things, I think that gives a really good insight into his attitude and his psyche in terms of what he expects of himself, where his goals are. I just want to not put the carriage in front of the horse here. Like, I just want him to continue to have like slow, steady, consistent development, which I really think is important, especially for defenders, and especially for really young defenders, rather than, I think where young defenders can kind of get caught up is thinking that they're a finished product before they are. And I don't want that to happen for him now. So to me, it's not, I think Konate is not in a good run of form. I don't think he's playing very well at the moment. I could probably be convinced that there's something holding on to, some sort of knock or injury he's been holding on to for a little while, because it's not, we've seen what his level is and what his level can be. And this is not it. And also, this is not the time in his career where he's just going to drop off. So, whether it's, something, a knock he's holding on to, something psychological, or just is in a bad run. I'm not ready to, he's not the one that I would be moving on from if we're talking about saleable assets in the squad. I'm not, especially for what we paid for him. I don't think that I think that warrants probably a little more time, just because you're not that money that you paid is not burning a hole that you could be using somewhere else. What was it, 35 million? 35 million.
Yeah, when we brought him in, it was 35 million, wasn't it? Yeah, which was, I mean, it is a bargain price for a centre back. Let's get it straight.
It is. And so to me, if he was, let's say double that, if he was 70, I think we're asking some real questions now about, okay, is that worth the price that we paid? Is that something that we need to think about moving on from? For the amount of money that we had paid, I just don't think that's the point that we're at. And I just don't, we've seen Joe Gomez go in much worse run of form and come back much, much stronger. So that, to me, there's definitely not a reason to pull the the escape lever just yet.
Yeah, absolutely. It is right. I mean, I do caveat that with a little bit. It's not just his recent run of form that I'm trying to, link to him. It is his recent run of form, but I am also incredibly concerned about his injury record. I have to say, I am worried about availability. Will always be the best ability, and it is a real cliche, and I appreciate it for everyone who's sat and groaned and went, "Oh God, here he goes again." But seriously, it's got to be that we need players who we can rely on. We look at Virgil van Dijk, we can rely on him. We look at, Alisson. Yeah, most of the time we can rely on him. There has been a few hamstring injury occasions that have come round for him, but on the great whole, we can rely on him. And as your starting centre back, you absolutely still need to be someone that we can rely on 80 to 90% of the time. And I just don't. I'd like to think that perhaps this is something that he can work through. It's something that he can develop, somebody he can get better with, and maybe, with the right therapies and the right diet and which ways that we can try and reduce his injuries, that can happen for him, because his injuries seem to come from innocuous situations. Unlike maybe a Diogo Jota, who, for example, because he's a warrior, because he's a fighter, because he doesn't mind being 5 foot odd and then getting stuck in with fellas twice his size, and he'll get hurt, and that's what happens. That's what happened a lot of the time to Jota. Where with Konate, most of the time, it doesn't seem to be that way. It just seems to come from a sprint or a turn or whatever, and it just worries. That's the only It's just that one little thing that just worries me, is that for his long-term future with at Liverpool, he's going to have to he's going to have to improve in that area, and that can sound harsh because you say, "Oh, I'm blaming people for injuries," and it's not blaming them. It's just unfortunately it's the rub of the green. Sometimes we all hear about players whose careers have been cut short because of season-ending injuries or career-ending injuries, but perhaps some people's top-level careers can be ended by just not being injury-proof enough. So there's a question, but that'll be a question definitely for perhaps another day. So let's keep it on the positivity train, everyone. Right, okie dokie. So I was less, though, impressed with sort of when we made the substitutions. We had some really, really nice positive situations to come in there. It was great to see Stefan Bajcetic back into the Liverpool team. Look rusty, absolutely fine. That's it's going to be. But we saw the flashes of his talent and his brilliance and the things that he will be able to bring to the Liverpool team going forward into next season. Full preseason under him. He's looking stronger. He's looking bigger. He's looking more mature, which I mean he will do because he was practically a child when he broke into the Liverpool team. Stefan Bajcetic, how important do you think he's going to be for the Liverpool team going into next season now that he's sort of through this sort of long-term mysterious injury?
Yep, massive. And especially so, I think if we're playing a double pivot, I think that a system with a double pivot suits his skill set.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really hard. You have to find a really special type of athlete to be able to be alone at the bottom of a midfield three. And I think it becomes, you can play a really complementary style of midfield two if you play that. And I think we've got some real technicians in there. And so to hopefully to have a really good stretch between here and a new preseason. He's certainly very high on my list of people that I can't wait to see during the preseason when they come here to Pittsburgh. He's very, very high on my list of people that I want to see take that next step, and someone who I think their ceiling is. We were speaking about Harvey Elliott and his ceiling. I think Steph's ceiling is massive ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, for everyone who's watching, just kind of get your opinions in there. I mean, we must all be excited for Stefan Bajcetic. He's been remarkable. We all go back to last season when he came into this team, this young, skinny, kind of being of a kid who come in there, and he was just so brave and intelligent and quick, and his, all of those things which are, you can't teach. You can't teach that raw ability that he clearly has, and the confidence to do what he can do. His ability to take the ball facing his own net is something that none of our players probably in our team actually have, and he showcased it in this game. He's come back, first game in the Premier League after, well, I don't know, practically a full season. Would you say? It's pretty much he's had an entire season out now?
Yeah, I think you can give or take a couple weeks here or there.
Yeah,
where he was back, but it's essentially, I think, been the entire season.
It's been a full season, and he takes the ball from Alisson, and he just takes that step, then drops a shoulder, and he's away. And having that in our team, and having that person who's got the technical ability that he does, I agree here with what Paul says. I agree to a certain extent. I'm convinced Endo's keeping the 6 warm. Endo is absolutely keeping it warm because Endo's not going to be our first choice going into next season under Arne Slot. If you've watched any of the videos, watched any of the sort of technical videos talking about the way that they play, Endo just hasn't got the technical ability to be a player in this system. He sort of showcased that today, actually, early on in the match, where he was receiving the ball and he was just a little bit too slow to release it, and just a little bit too slow to react, and that's okay. That's not to say that he's bad. It's just to say that unfortunately it's not quite he's been targeted multiple times. Endo was targeted very early on in the season against Crystal Palace, where they knew that he was someone that if you can pressure him quickly, there is a possibility that he could lose the ball either by being tackled or potentially because he just gives the ball away through a pass. It's just not quite good enough. And a couple of occasions that happened today. My kind of question to yourself and question to the chat is, and it's actually just been put with Tanya. Connor's just put in there, so it's a really good time to say is, I may be using this feat. I'm honestly convinced that maybe now we will be getting that CDM that we so coveted from last season, where we didn't get Caicedo and we weren't, and I think rightfully so, weren't bullied into making another very expensive CDM decision because we missed out on our first choice target in Caicedo. So, Carl, my question is, do you think that this is priority number one in the transfer budget?
I don't think it's number one, no. Especially if Steph is going to take the next step and be an option, I think that makes it not priority number one. Now, if there are real concerns about whether or not he's able to do that, then I think you're looking at much more of a 1A 1B situation with a central defender. Because I'm unsure, I think, of where Szoboszlai is going to fit in with a new system. I think probably it won't be in those two central defensive midfielders, or the base, the double pivot. I don't think that it's going to be in either of those places. I think he's too much of an athlete. I think he's too good at doing other things to have him be in one of those two. Although I can certainly be proven wrong. I'm willing to listen to outside opinions on that. So, but I think that kind of leaves us at four people who can play it in that double pivot, right? And
going into the double pivot, you would say McAllister's an absolute starter in that situation. Yep. Question marks over whether Trent Alexander-Arnold will be moved out into position. I'm convinced he either plays there or he plays more advanced. I'm almost certain he doesn't play at right back. I'm pretty much ready to kind of stick the house on the next season going forward for Trent once he signs his deal. I've seen someone put in there. I think that that's going to be really important to him going forward in his career. I believe that he doesn't want to be a defender anymore, and rightfully so, because we don't need to bring him in as a defender anymore. We have the player available. Connor Bradley exists. We can bring in another right back to cover him. That's an easier situation to cover. We want Trent Alexander-Arnold playing where he can influence football matches, don't we? And that's further up the pitch. So he can either play the 10 or he can play into the 6 or the 8 or whichever number. But these possibly there. Endo, I believe, will be a cover player, and then question marks do start to kind of come in there. To be honest with you, it probably is right to say that we have 3 players to cover the 6. Well, double 6 is what we would know, what we think we'll play.
Yeah, Arne Slott's system has kind of looked like as well, from what I've seen of it, and I'm sure you've seen this as well. He does like to play right backs and left backs that are more close to central defenders, more close to center backs. So I think that works well for Joe Gomez to play right back, and then for the big need then to be a left-sided defender, someone who can cover either left center back or left back. And has kind of more attributes for a center back rather than just Kostas Tsimikas, who very much is like, obviously I think of backup quality, but is very going forward, crossing. I think someone who's a little more stay at home, a little more solid defensively, I think is to me that becomes the number one need. I don't know if you have any anybody identified. In the 60 to 70 million range,
It's a lot of money.
Do you have a midfielder that you are nailed on that you're like, that's the one for that amount of money? I just don't know that the market has changed that drastically from last summer at that position, which, all we talked about last summer was, how frustrated we were that there were just not options or reasonable options we felt at that price range. We felt like there was definitely some you could get for more, but when you're fishing in that pond, you're going to get you're going to get teams that are overinflating their players' prices because there's only so many who are reasonable, I think.
I mean, that's a question that's probably well worth asking for those who are watching. 2,500 of you watching now, really thank you very much for that. Is put your names in the chat who you think our DM should be. I mean, Paul's has put in there Matt Sweefer. I mean, Matt Sweefer would be available for around 35 million euros, which is absolutely a reasonable sort of assertion that he would be someone who could fit into that position. The question I posed on a recent space we had on the transfer ring was actually the DM or the 6 or one of the double sixes that we would have to bring in would need to kind of fit a profile, which is quite difficult. Is that they need to be a ball playing central defensive midfielder who also has the ability to be, a destroyer at the same time. And it's kind of you're looking for a Rodri Light, and a Rodri Light isn't always going to be, someone who's going to be available. And we saw last season the CDM market just exploded. It went into ridiculous sort of numbers. We saw Declan Rice leave for £100 million. We saw Caicedo leave for £115 million. We obviously saw, Yves Bissouma go the year or so before for an absolute knockdown price out of Brighton, and then he had a bit of a resurgence playing under Spurs start of the early part of the season. So, we even looked at the was it Decore out of have I got his surname wrong, out of Crystal Palace?
Yes, that was a conversation we had for especially the last month of the transfer window, and the quoted price was like £75 million, like an insane amount of money.
Well, that's kind of where I was alluding to. I'm glad you've remembered that. That was alluding to, is that we didn't make that sort of panic purchase, but once we didn't get Caicedo, because we were absolutely right to walk away from that situation. If you're breaking a British transfer record for a player, you should absolutely be getting them. What you don't do is then go and break it again. That's just that's bad business, exceptionally bad business. And then for us to kind of go, right, all right, then, well, we've shown our hand now to absolutely everybody that we have lots of money available. So when Palace, who respectfully to Crystal Palace and respectfully to Decore at Crystal Palace, he's not worth 75 million quid. Let me tell you, he's not. He is not worth that money, but there's a lot of people who are absolutely desperate for him. And I can understand why. I can absolutely understand why they were desperate to bring in that player. So what we kind of need to look at now is we've got the right people in charge now. Edwards, Hughes, they are making the signings. For everyone who's watching now and anyone who doesn't kind of maybe, hasn't heard or doesn't understand or maybe wasn't here when Edwards was calling the shots in the past. Arne Slot's not buying the footballers. It's going to be Edwards and Hughes. The players that we bring in will come from a laptop. The information and the data will be picking our players. The reason we found players like Andy Robertson and we found players like even Kostas Tsimikas, we actually talked about this off air. Kostas Tsimikas, we got him for £15 million. What a bargain. He's not been exceptional. He hasn't kicked on. He's not really kind of developed his career to maybe where we wanted him to be. But what a backup. He's been a brilliant backup, as a left back, and he's had some really important assists going forward. He's arguably got a better cross rubber ball than Andy Robertson. So what's going to go forward is that I trust these guys who are running the transfer and the recruitment now. I trust them inexplicitly. Is that whoever they choose, if they pick a fella out of Montpellier, or they pick some fella out of this league over here, or they pick someone out of the K League or the J League, or it doesn't matter. For me, is that they've delivered so many times when it comes to players, where they've identified somebody. and other clubs haven't. They've not seen it yet. They've not seen what that player is. Andy Robertson out of Hull for £8 million. I sighed and groaned, as I think many people probably did. And here I am with egg on my face.
It's not, that's not sexy business, but I to your point, and I think you make exactly the point that I was kind of getting towards, which is that I don't think that that's the kind of, I don't think that we had said 60 to 70. I don't think that's the kind of pool we're playing in anymore. I think we're much more likely to do business with someone in Austria, someone in Brazil, someone in, like you said, the K League, the J League, whatever it is, for 15, 20, 25, 30.
Yep.
I think, based on, like you said, who's running the recruitment and how they like to go about their business, we are much more likely to do business like that. And frankly, like, there's only so much football that I can watch, just like in the day. So I just don't have a good idea. I don't think of some of those who some of those recruits would even be. And I think that there's a ton of players who can be great for Liverpool, who can be phenomenal. But I don't know that I have the right answer for who that is. And frankly, I don't think that we should be. I don't think we should probably be playing in the 60 to 70 million pool unless we're really convinced that they're the solution for the next 8 years.
And do you know what, Cole? You've got this brilliant ability to be able to just take that point that I was about to make and then just go, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is that as much as I can sit here and we can all sit here and go, look at this incredible business that we did with this player on the cheap. Look what we did with this player and look what we did with all of these players. What we're also not frightened to do is when the data points to someone being an absolute transformer, being somebody who is the best, who is the greatest, who is the one who can be the difference, is that Liverpool will get the checkbook out. And we did that with Virgil van Dijk. Yeah, but you had the Coutinho money. Yeah, we did, but we didn't have to spend it. Like, we didn't have to go out there and spend it on Virgil van Dijk and break £75 million for a centre-back, being obviously the record at the time for a centre-back. And it was because the club trusted the fact that even at £75 million, he's absolutely worth every single penny. So it's not always a case of like Liverpool will go and look for the cheapest options. They will go for the options which absolutely make the most sense. Like you've rightfully said, is that, if there is a player who is £60 million, say it's a release clause, Inacio, for example, is probably going to be around about that number. Mm-hmm. If the data comes out there and the laptop and all the rest of it has come out there and said that we need a left-sided, left-footed centre-back, that is the next role in our club, that all the analysis is put together and said, this is where we are weak and this is what's causing us X problems. If he is the player to fix those issues based on age profile, based on what he can do as a footballer, based on his trajectory, based on his injury history, based on numerous data points that will have to be kind of fed into it, that they will go out there and they will pay, for the money that is required for certain players. And so I trust it is that when we go through this summer, and I'm sure a lot of you will be joining us for, and I really hope that you do, for our, transfer news and our build up. And then we'll hear daily bringing that to you as it comes out from the news journalists and whatever news that we can pick up, is that when we hear something, I'm almost convinced, I don't know about you, Carl, that Liverpool will move like a submarine. They'll move like a nuclear submarine, and what will happen is we'll know nothing. Then all of a sudden, it'll emerge, and then we'll know. What do you make of that? Do you think that we're going to be moving in almost silence this summer?
I would love for that to be the case. That would be what a fun summer that would be. Join us here, 7:30 weekdays. We'll be here. I would love for that to be the case. The Fabinho transfer was so fun. Like we had a deep disappointment, and the next day we were like, here we go. Like we're reloading. We're going to go again. And to have that, I understand a lot of what we do here is speculative and commenting on speculation. So maybe, maybe for us as a whole, not the best. But I think on a personal level, that's just so fun. Just to have it be like, oh, it's done. It's done. It's nailed on. This was our guy. We went and we did it. And then here he is. Ta-da.
Well, I mean, this is it, isn't it? I'm almost convinced, to be honest with you, that the data model has been sat there and we did it this summer. Look at Endo, for example. Endo came out of absolutely nowhere. Like, it was like, oh, right, okay. It caught all the journalist stuff. Nobody had this. We moved in silence this summer with Dominic Sabas. Like, only at the last moment did David Ornstein, within 12 hours of the deal being agreed, was he able to kind of break that news before kind of the club was able to break it. And it shows that even before we had, a Hughes and Edwards back in charge, that the club was still working in a very similar pattern as the way that I believe it will do going forward, that we're not going to be very noisy when it comes to giving away who we're interested in. There might be a little bit of subterfuge going on as well when it comes to, who we're interested in. We might hear a name all of a sudden be like, oh, it's going to be him. And then all of a sudden there'll be a player of like, oh, didn't see that come from. So, yeah. And looking at Endo, for example, Endo's coming. I thought Endo had a relatively good game today, and he's had a brilliant season on the whole, especially for the price tag. Is that he met a data point somewhere? He obviously met what the club wanted. It wasn't just luck. It wasn't just like a case of, oh, this lad at Stuttgart who, absolutely nobody had heard of was going to be able to put up the performances that he did against clubs like Manchester City and, just almost everybody. There's only one or two games where he looks like he's a little bit leggy, and that's okay for a fella who's in his 30s. I know all about that. But yeah, so I was very, very pleased with today's game, and I think there's a lot for us to look forward to going into next season. And I thought it was really positive, and I'm sure everyone else will agree, is that, we've got one more home game of Jurgen Klopp, and that's it. It's a wrap. 9 years nearly finished. And yeah, it's going to be a lot. How do you feel going forward into the Aston Villa game midweek? Are you convinced that it's just going to be the Jurgen Klopp swan song and we're just going to play the whole 9 yards, the whole shebang, and just go on to try and win every single game? Or do you think we're going to see some heavy rotation now that third is absolutely guaranteed? It doesn't matter what happens. We're not going to lose the prize money for finishing third instead of fourth.
Yeah. I don't think that there's going to be a ton of rotation. I think they'll want to win the games because they're competitors and because that's what is expected of them. And I think, when you are so close to the end, I think that really kind of, you can say, and, since we've known that Jurgen's been going, like, you can say, we're coming to the end. We're coming to the end. We're getting closer to the end. I just don't think it registers until you see Jurgen like tearing up at You'll Never Walk Alone before the game today. And it being like, that's the last like regular, like normal quote unquote time that he's going to do that, because the next time, like, he's going to be stood there in front of it, like just probably weeping. And as will we, like, frankly, like, yeah. If you want to see grown men cry, it's a good week to do that. And as well, if we're talking about Villa, like, they've had about 12 people healthy at any given moment all year. Like, that's how many people they have had healthy, like, consistently. They get back one, they lose one. Like, they're just at like 12 to 14 players healthy at any given time. So I expect us to want to win the game as badly as we did today. Especially because you see an opponent, I think, in kind of similar straits where, they are in that 4th to 7th, range, but just maybe are not having the best time of it right now.
See, I watched them today. I thought they were absolutely terrible. You came up against a Brighton team who has been equally terrible in the last 10 games, and I expected it to be an absolute goal fest, almost like a basketball game of which, both teams concede loads of goals, but also are capable of scoring goals. And today
it was much more fun.
Yeah, of course, it would have been much more fun. It was a horrible game to watch if anyone else did catch it. I thought it was dreadfully boring. But it was also, it was a case of just looking at this is Aston Villa, who, top four's is pretty much guaranteed. Now, I think it is guaranteed mathematically, to be honest with you. It was just like a case of where was I know they got beat midweek against Olympiacos, and they just didn't seem to have that level of fight in them, which was quite disappointing, to be totally honest with you. I expected a little bit more out of them. We absolutely thrashed Aston Villa, of course, first game of the season, one which was perhaps still our best performance of the season. I don't know, especially a first half performance. It was absolutely exceptional. But it was.
I feel like that was like.
It felt like it felt like a lifetime ago, to be totally honest with you. Actually, I wanted just to Paul Goulding's just put a comment on here, which I wanted to kind of address, which is a really fair point, to be honest with you. If the computer says no, will Edward say sorry, or will Slot have a say? Well, what I'll say is, we've had this sort of debate in the last couple of days, sort of within our group chat, is talking about the fact that let's look back at the transfer deals that we've done in the last couple of years. We look at sort of going forward, maybe from where Nunes, maybe Diaz was in the 2022 season, January 22, all the way through till probably this year. I think it's probably fair to say that some of the decisions that we've made on buying some players perhaps hasn't always come from a data point, and maybe has perhaps come from a little bit of the heart and a little bit of the eye, and perhaps that is moving away from what was so successful in the past and going a little bit more to kind of this old-fashioned way of, the coach or, the manager or somebody like that goes, I like the way that he runs, or I like the way that he moves, or I like the way that he, he carries himself, or he holds the ball up. And it's sort of not quite worked for us. I can't say that we could pin down any of our transfers that we've made since 2022 have really came anywhere close to some of the transfers that we made previously to that. And that's not just because of the price tags. It does play a part, because as with a big price tag comes with big expectations. It's if Andy Robertson had cost us 60 million quid, then we would all say very good. But that's what I expect from you. However,
this is the Nunes argument currently, which is that I think the only reason that people are really, really starting to lose patience is because of the amount of money that was paid for.
And that is fair, and it's difficult in a world that exists with an Erling Haaland in the league, to be honest with you, because he was unfairly compared to a player who is, generational finisher, perhaps not a generational footballer, certainly not, but as a finisher or as a striker, as an out-and-out goal scorer, absolutely generational. Perhaps we won't see anybody who is as capable of scoring from within 12 yards as Erling Haaland is, and he has also his fair share of missing the goal, of course. But what we will have is the fact that when you have players like Kevin De Bruyne, and when you have players who can go out there and give him the ball, he's going to score goals, of course. And I'm confident that Darwin Núñez is capable of kicking on again this season. I really am. I'm not just putting out there and saying like, oh, we are who he is. It's, loads of people have put this forward with him. Darwin Núñez has every ability. He's now going to be turning 25 in the summer. Mm-hmm. Sometimes players don't always develop at the ages where you kind of expect them to. Look at Ollie Watkins this season. Ollie Watkins is having his best season of his entire life. He's 28. He's 28.
I can't believe that.
He's 28 years of age, and sometimes everyone in this, I think we'd have 75% of the chat would say, I'd have Ollie Watkins in the Liverpool team at a heartbeat. Okay. But what if I could tell you that you could have a player whose numbers aren't a million miles away from where Ollie Watkins' numbers are, but you can also have him 3 years younger? And that he has so many chances, and the data will point towards, and just go where you're saying here, Paul, we'll get onto your point, is that with the data, we'll sit there and it will say, if he's having chances, that's what's important. Chances lead to goals. And eventually, all it's going to take is for things to just go the right way for him. And then all of a sudden, he's hitting 30 goals in one season. It can unfortunately be just as simple as that. It will, if he continues to create the chances that he has done in this last season, I'm absolutely convinced he's got every chance of scoring more goals.
Yeah. I think the first quarter of next season, I think is probably the most important like quarter of a season for him that you could imagine. I think kind of what happens with that or how that trends is going to probably be the story of his Liverpool career. If it trends up in terms of goal contributions, I think that I don't think he'll slow down. If that continues downturning, I don't know how he comes back from it. Just based on the amount of money spent as investment for him.
100%. I mean, just to go with what you're saying there, Paul, I really want to get onto your point, but it's just this, we'll finish this because he is part of the reason as to why I feel that he is that sort of he is a data point. He absolutely is a data modeling, recruiter's absolute wet dream, because he's somebody who is constantly getting chances and having shots on target, and he does have high quality shots. And what they'll then look at is and say, you can't teach that. Like, that's not something that he stands out on, on almost every barometer and every chart as somebody who has this sort of chance creation and these shots that he has. And we always have these kind of old age adages of saying like he's kind of a victim of his own success at times, is that he has shots and chances that other players don't even get. And he's then punished for the fact that he doesn't score it. And that's fair. Like that is fair. There is many, many times where he should have scored and hasn't scored, and it has been costly. But I'll also go back and remind people of times when he has scored for us and has won us games individually. Newcastle and Nottingham Forest are 2 games.
Correct.
There they are. There's 5 points he put on the board for us on his own. So let's put that to that side. So just to say this about, will it be a case? Arne Slot will be involved, in my opinion, but he's not in charge. He's not going to have final say when it comes to who comes and who goes. Importantly, I think he'll absolutely be asked. I think he'll be presented with players. I think he'll be presented with profiles. But he has said himself, which is brilliant, and also it's been reported in the Times under Paul Joyce as well, is that he's here to be the head coach. His job is to take the players, coach the players, develop the team, develop the youth, and allow other people to take over the absolutely enormous job of recruitment. Like, it's such a big job that there's no possible way that you could coach a team the size of Liverpool and then also have the ability to know enough when it comes to bringing in the next players. I'm sure he'll have his own opinions and go, oh, I like this player, I like that player. Of course he will. He's a football man. He's a football coach. He knows those things. But it'll likely be that he'll be presented with players who they have identified, and then he'll be asked, which of these players are you the most, what are your opinions? What are your opinions of these players? And then that will be taken into account. Cole, do you think I'm miles off in that estimation?
No, I don't. I think you're spot on. And I think that, we or I often reference the movie Moneyball. One of the things I talk about, is replacing players in the aggregate. I think the best solution to replacing Jurgen Klopp is by splitting up the responsibilities that he has had and then has done. I think, and frankly, I think it's the only way to do so. To try and replicate the job that he's done and to be the person that he is, and to, coordinate transfer, like, it's too much. It's too much to ask. It's much easier just to say, hey, focus on coaching the first team and focus on coaching, be the first team coach.
Yeah.
And we'll sort, and kind of compartmentalizing different departments of the club and making sure that in that way that you're not asking too much of someone too early. Now, of course, if Arne Slot turns out to be, an incredible coach and, is here for a very long time, he will gain some of those, different things back. But to have someone, or to ask someone to come in from outside and just to pick up all of those things at once, I think is irresponsible, or would be irresponsible business to ask someone to do that. So I think it is the best solution to just ask simple things of him, which is like coach the first team and like make us a great product.
Yeah, definitely, and I think there's going to be a stream coming forward in the future, probably in the obviously in the off season, and we'll need to discuss perhaps where things maybe did change. We can't escape the fact that Michael Edwards left.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Edwards didn't leave because he didn't fancy it anymore. He didn't leave because he wanted to go and be somewhere else. He had job.
I mean, it's been widely reported that was over a dispute about who gets final say about.
Exactly.
Transfers.
Exactly. Michael Edwards didn't go off and go and get another job at another club. He had everyone was interested. He could have gone anywhere. That's
pretty much everyone, apparently.
Yeah, every one of them, his agent, his phone would have been off the hook. As soon as he left, they'd have been on to him. Well, Mike Edwards, come here, come to our hotel, come, let's treat you for the weekend. Let's just have a conversation. All those things would have been going on. And they were. It's been widely reported. And as you've just said, Carl, is that he left because of the discussions about who was having the final say. Yeah. And that's right, is that ultimately the sporting director should have the final say when it comes to especially contracts. That's their job. Their job is not about who they like or who's their friend or who, all these other sort of personal elements, which are obviously important, but for the long-term vision of a football club and for the long-term health of a football club, it will look at certain situations and say, your time has come to an end here. And I think that because he wasn't allowed to make those decisions, and you could say, well, there's only that one occasion. Well, there's actually not. There's two. Julian Ward walked as well. He walked for exactly the same reason. He walked because he wasn't clearly the person who was making the decisions when it came to that part of the job role. And that's an untenable situation for any kind of, sporting director, is that they can't be in a situation where they're ultimately saying, well, I don't know what I'm here for. Well, what's the point of me? Like, if I can't do all of my job, but you'll happily probably allow me to do all the things that you don't want to do, well, do you know something? I'm not going to be here in the first place. You know what? I'll walk. I don't need to be here to do all the stuff you don't want to do, but you'll happily say who we buy and who we don't. So that's a conversation probably for another day, but I'm of the opinion now that this is a long-term sort of final lock on the fact that I don't believe Liverpool will ever have a manager as powerful as Jurgen Klopp ever.
And I think that's exactly correct. And I think it's really responsible business and like business practices to recognize that.
Yeah.
To be like, hey, like we shouldn't do that again. Like that's a special person who has a incredibly special skill set. And like, there are not just other people like him who just have the kind of man management, tactical management, world football. Not like there just are not those people just don't grow on trees.
Yeah, they're once in a lifetime, aren't they? They're once in a lifetime.
They are, and restructuring the club, I think, to fit what would be a more modern sensibility about football, I think is exactly correct. I think it's the responsible thing to do.
Yeah, I think it was absolutely the right thing for us to do going forward. Right, everyone, we've had an hour. I think it's time for us to call it a day. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. I've really appreciated everybody who's got involved in the comments. I've really appreciated all 3,500 of you who are currently watching and listening now. It means an awful lot to us. What I can ask, though, is if you just got 2 seconds, could you please just like and subscribe to us? If you're not already, please just do it. We're on every night, sometimes twice in an evening. If there's a post game or a pre game, we're there. Just come and join us. Just get involved. As you can see, we try and get as many people involved in the chat as we can. We try and get as many comments up as we can. This is very active and a very sort of like interactive chat. It's not just a case of you come and watch us talk nonsense for an hour. We want you to be involved. We want you to influence the chat. We want your opinions, and that's important to us. So if you can do that for us, please do. We're going to be on YouTube, and we're going to be going on to Twitter for an entire month. We're going to try and bring all of those people who currently got on the Twitter world, and those of you who are not already subscribed to the Twitter, on your X, I suppose as it should be called now, onto X. Give us a like, give us a follow, and come and join us. We're here every night. We hope you've enjoyed the chat for this evening. I know I have. But until next time, thanks very much. Have a great evening, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.